Welcome to the ECE Classroom Podcast with your host, Susie Beghin. Inspiring early childhood educators every day. Hello, and welcome to the ECE Classroom Podcast. My name is Susie Beghin, and I'm the host of the show. Today, we're going to be talking about nature play, and I've invited a special guest who's very experienced in all things to do with outdoor nature play. It's Rusty Keeler. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Rusty, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. I'm 5'10.5" tall, and I won't say my weight. I live in Ithaca, New York, and I am a natural playscape designer and an author and speaker. I've written a couple books about nature play and risky play, and I kind of do talks at conferences kind of advocating for play and saying yes to play and how we can, think about our outdoor environments in new ways and add more nature and loose parts. And I have two sons, 12 and 8, and so that keeps me busy.
So I'm a play enthusiast, I'd like to say. So I also have a book called Learn to Play where I talk about the importance of play. But one of my passions is actually nature. I love being in nature. I just feel really calm when I'm in nature, and I love to incorporate nature into play. So I kind of feel like we're going to have a good time today.
Yeah, all right.
So tell me a little bit about nature play. Why do you think it's important? Why should people seriously consider this, adding it to their program if it's not already part of their program?
Sure. We are nature. Children are nature. Like, we are beings on this planet. And I believe that, young children exploring, when they're outside, they are exploring the planet. No matter what your yard is, no matter what your playground is, they're learning, they're growing. And so I love the idea of putting beautiful things out in their yards, in the play yards, and connecting them to this planet that we are on. And that also involves like the seasons. What can we put outside that celebrates the seasons in terms of flowers in bloom in spring, or fruit, growing over the season, and eating fruit, or berries when they're ripe. But this idea that, especially in this day and age when there's screens and lots of scheduling things and distractions, I'm kind of lobbying for the simplicity of grass or trees or dirt or flowers, rocks, water, sand, mud, kind of the real stuff, so that children can kind of connect with that as they're kind of learning about life on the planet.
And I feel that children generally tend to gravitate towards nature. They gravitate easily to playing with dirt. They don't have to be shown what to do. I feel like it's something that just comes naturally for children.
Yeah, I agree. You put them in those environments and kind of give them the nod, like, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, go explore. And I feel like there's a natural relationship that's built in nature and children, or children and nature. I feel like they feel like part of the family, like the grass and the bugs, or the fuzzy caterpillars, or the birds, or the clouds. Like, I feel like, and that children feel that. They feel that relationship. And I feel like we lucky adults who can be with children in those kind of environments, or nature environments, or outdoors, if we can take deep breaths, we can see it too, and we can remember it too. Amidst our busy lives, we can get to that simplicity of the connection to nature, the connection to the planet, connection to ourselves, which is the deep stuff. In one sense, it is simple. And in another sense, it's the most deep, beautiful thing there is.
Wow, everything you said just resonates so well with me.
Yeah.
And it must be that child within me, like that inner child that really makes me seek out nature. Because like you said, there's just that connection there. And it's so innate in our being.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me
Mm-hmm.
about incorporating nature into our programming. We're talking mostly about outdoors today. I mean, we can also bring nature inside, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
let's just focus on outside today. How can we incorporate, let's say, for example, you have a play yard, which is a little bit in the city, not too much nature in it. Maybe it's pavement, maybe it's, static flooring, so you don't have grass. How can you incorporate nature into the playgrounds to create an environment that feels like you're in the forest?
Yeah. I think it's really important for people to know that they don't have to do huge things to still make a big difference in children's lives. It doesn't have to be full on forest and full on, mountains and hills and streams and, it doesn't have to be anything grand. It's great if it can be, and it's great to bring children to those kinds of things. But when we are thinking about improving our outdoor spaces, I say the small steps. What are the small steps that we can take? Because those small steps make a big impact in children's lives. They get down and explore them up close and personal. So I feel like I like to start that way because people could get overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, I have playground equipment and a rubber surfacing and that you don't have. I can't even plant, anything in the ground. That's okay. That's okay. You can still start small in other ways. And so I think, the idea of, there's, I guess I say 3 ways that we can kind of boost children's outdoor play and learning. And I think about that as your yard, your stuff, loose parts, and what we say yes to. And that kind of touches on risky play. We can get into that later. But things with your yard, it could be flower boxes to plant in. You could, and if you can't dig down, you could get some potted, you could do potted plants. You could have just potted plants that there's no plant in it. Maybe it's just dirt. And that's like loose material that children can dig in. I see people have like watering, you can get them from like farm stores and things, watering troughs for animals. Some people like to fill that with dirt and grow things in there. I'm all about, it's nice to have beautiful things, but I'm really about the play. Like, what can we put in there where children can like pick things and use it in their play and take it to other parts of the play space? So even like getting the raised planters, and you could arrange those, it's nice to have them along a chain link fence, kind of greening things up. But then you can get creative, like how you arrange those. So maybe you could arrange them in a square with like an opening to get inside, and then grow things that get tall, like sunflowers or corn, or zinnias or other, different kinds of things. So you can almost create little rooms with plants. So you could think about like having a square in a corner of your yard, even if it's all man-made equipment and rubber surfacing, and you have this little square of the raised planters, and there's things growing, and maybe you have some little log benches or little seats that you bring from inside outside, and you've created like a living room to get inside of.
Hmm.
And then once you do things like that, then that also invites, wildlife, like butterflies or interesting bugs for children to discover. And then you're also kind of seeing children are part of the season of growth, the seasons, seeing how those sunflowers go from being little teeny things that you have to be careful of to then, towering over them and then bursting into bloom and then having seeds, and maybe that feeds the birds. So planting can be a way. But then also thinking about like the loose parts or other materials that you can get from your own community that even don't cost a lot of money. And so that's things like stumps, like wooden logs and stumps. You start bringing those into your yard, and suddenly it takes on the character of feeling more natural. And you can often get stumps and logs for free, from tree service businesses that get hired to take trees out of people's yards and that kind of thing. When they take trees down, they have to find a place to get rid of all the logs and the pieces and parts that they just took down. And if you called them up and you let them know that you'd take some of those, if they're doing a project in your area, they could deliver pieces and parts. And there could be stumps for sitting on. You could put stumps in a circle, reading circles, or make obstacle courses, or have long logs as balance beams or long benches. You could have them sliced up into tree cookies. So it could be like natural building blocks outside that children can build with, loose materials. And then those logs also, they go through their process of life and then breaking down, or maybe that invites some interesting bugs inside, or you see what happens, children see what happens to wood, as it ages, and maybe then it goes into wood chips, or it goes back into the earth, and then you can get more logs.
Those are great ideas. Those are all wonderful ideas. I can tell you that I have 3 centers, and one of my centers has a playground that is a covered area in a plaza. So it has, rubber surfacing floor, fencing, and there's no nature in there at all. We had to bring everything in. So we did
Yeah.
things like mud kitchens and tree stumps and, logs. So all the things that you're suggesting
Hmm.
are things that we brought in to try to make the space feel more natural, so that you're not like
Yeah.
feeling like you're in the middle of a plaza, right?
That's right. Yeah, and again, sometimes from the adult point of view, I might think like, oh, I just planted a few sunflowers, or I just brought in logs, or whatever. But again, from the child's perspective, you've changed the whole thing. And so that those stumps, they have suddenly there's a whole different character, a whole different feel out there, and it has that natural, connection, which of course feels very different than the equipment. You know, play equipment can be great, it can do great things, it can last a long time, but it has a different feel to it, steel or the posts and of equipment versus the log that's organic, or it's changing, or you see rings in the stumps and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So what would you say are some must-haves for like equipment in an outdoor play space? You kind of mentioned a couple, but if you can give me kind of your list of what you think is a good starting point. Like you
Yeah.
said, I don't want to make anyone feel overwhelmed that they have to transform their whole space, but maybe some things that they can add slowly to improve the
Hmm.
space.
Sure. um I'm pro mud kitchen. Yeah, I think a mud kitchen is a great first step for people to think about having, a little bit of messier area. And, I'm all about that free play, child-led play, where they're making the decisions and they're, kind of controlling the space and changing it. And different than play equipment, which is like made to not change, made to be strong, made to stay that way for years. But and that can be great. But what I love is that idea of like, what can we bring into the space where it's dynamic? It is changing according to the children that day, to their ideas, to the story, of the childhood, of the play, of that day, that week, that month. So it's that kind of loose materials. So I think, you can do changes to your yard. So that could be, you know, hills. It could be, planting big things, trees and stuff. But then bringing in the loose materials is a great start. And I think mud kitchens kind of are a great first step, because, that is saying, and a mud kitchen could be something you purchase. There's a lot of nice ones out on the market. I've worked with Kaplan to design a whole line of nice equipment that put a lot of love into. But you can also make your own mud kitchen. And you could think of a mud kitchen really as just like some sort of surface, a table type surface,
Table, yeah.
and yeah, any kind of surface, and then some like old beat up pots and pans, frying pans, and then some loose materials that children can stir and make their concoctions, their soups, their spaghettis, their poisons, stir it all up. And then that's that idea of like having a little bit of mess, a little bit of organicness into the yard. And I've seen mud kitchens that were huge and like a whole room that you go inside of, and there's counters and there's storage and there's water hookups, and it's in sand. So it's not even mud. I've seen them in mud. I've seen them in gravel. I've seen them in wood chips. I've seen them with no loose material. I've seen them not with tabletops, just on the ground, frying pans, and little shovels to dig. So I think that's a great first step as far as a thing to add, like a zone.
Uh-huh.
Also, the idea of like, how about just a digging area? I've seen great spaces that are just like, we are just going to have one corner of our yard be a designated place to dig. And so you could have the most, man-made, metal equipment and all, surfacing and everything, but maybe there's one corner that you just say yes to. And so the loose part would be like different kinds of shovels and things to kind of get into it. And, I've visited centers that have a digging area and like some giant hole, and they're like, we've been working on this hole for 6 months. We're going down, down, down. And yeah. And so it's like, and then there's going to be treasures under there, and what's under there. And, again, part of the folklore of the play of that year revolved around a hole. Yeah. Yeah.
That reminds me of
Yeah.
the sandbox, right? Like most, typical playgrounds you see would have a sandbox of some sort, like a digging area, but it doesn't have to be sand. It can be anything.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about the loose parts. You mentioned a little bit about it. What are your favorite loose parts to add to the outdoor play? You mentioned pots
Yeah.
and pans, things like that. What about other
That's
type items?
That's right. That's right. It's interesting. If you picture like your a classroom, with tables and reading areas and dramatic play areas and all that stuff nicely set up, it would be so weird if there weren't any books in the reading area, or if there weren't any dress up clothes in the dress up area, or if there weren't any like building blocks or plastic dinosaurs in like the free play area, right? You just have nice shelves and a nice carpet, but it's that loose stuff inside that is the pizzazz, right? Of course, it would be absurd to have a classroom like that. But sometimes our outdoor spaces are like that. Like you might have nice equipment, or you might even have a nice natural area, but there's no stuff. There's
Stuff.
no
Yeah,
loose
you need
stuff
stuff.
you need stuff. So the loose parts are they're the stuff. They're the stuff, and it could be toys, plastic dinosaurs or buckets and things like that. But I'm all about, it's almost anything can be a loose part. Almost anything. So everything from traffic cones. You can use your voice in different ways and have them set up. Natural things, straw bales, boards, those tree cookies that can be, put in different areas. It could be things like wagons. It could be, the sunflower heads that, that you grow. It could be, I joke about it. It could be a chicken. It could be, the list goes on and on and on and on. So it's really, you kind of, when you're thinking about loose parts, it's like, oh, how you think two ways. How would children use this? So you kind of look at it from a child's eye view. And then you look at it like, okay, what are the safety ramifications of this thing? Because you might have like PVC tubes, or you have tennis balls. And I'm all about having like multiple kinds of things. So not just a couple tennis balls, but what if you had like 50 tennis balls? And I'm not talking like buying, no, we're not buying 50 tennis balls, but I like, I'm all about like thinking about your community, where you can get things in your own community for free. And so think about like, okay, are there any tennis clubs or a high school tennis team or a college tennis team in your area? They like the fresh tennis balls out of the can, and they use them for a certain amount of time, and then they get rid of them. So again, it's making that call, just like to the tree service place, of like, hey, when you get rid of your old tennis balls, we'll take them. And sure enough, you get a call one day and they have a box full of like 150 tennis balls. And, what are you going to use those? What's going to happen? And, you add those with gutters and, boards or, the traffic cones, and, all sorts of fun things can happen. Right?
I love the idea of adding the community into it. A lot of times I find in my own community, once you identify yourself as a daycare, they're willing to help. They're willing to say, oh, yeah, we have some,
Yes.
stuff that we're not using. We can box it up and send it to you. So, I think you should use that to your advantage, that, they want to help children. I wanted to ask you about, I ran into an issue once where we just implemented mud kitchens in our playgrounds this summer, actually. And when we introduced it, it was a new concept for the parents. So we had to do a little bit of education for parents to say, we were introducing these mud kitchens into our playground. They're going to be there every day. The kids will get messy. I did get a little bit of pushback from some parents who are like, I don't know if we want our children to be messy every day, you know? Can you just do it once a week? Can you talk about how you would approach that with parents to let them know the benefits of having mud on their skin? Like it's not going to harm them in any way.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're to the place now where, we're all understanding, people who advocate for play and work with children. We know that children, they need to get into it and, let the play, we follow the play. And sometimes the point is to get messy, but more often than not, the point is the play and what's happening. And getting messy could be just kind of a byproduct of that. So we know when we see children deeply engaged at the mud kitchen, or deeply engaged in a garden planting things, or having 150 tennis balls and gutters, back doing things. We know so many things are happening for their bodies, their minds, their hearts, their spirits. So we know that. So it feels like kind of the next step is, okay, how do we communicate that? Some parents get it. Some parents are like, yeah. That's what we want for our children. I remember talking to a dad who said, if I pick my daughter up from preschool and if she has mud behind her ear, I know she had a good day. Yes, but not all parents have that attitude already. So they need to be coached a little, or, have their horizons broadened by people, like all of us who kind of understand play and love play and see how this kind of play is deeply connected to children's healthy growth and development for their lives. It's the foundation to their lives. And so that's what parents want, right? That's what they're hoping for. They want them to be safe and, have eat lunch and have a nap and, all the that kind of stuff. But ultimately, they want the same things we do, great, healthy development. So it's our job to kind of communicate that. And, some of it is that documentation of taking pictures and showing what's going on. I mean, that's the thing that's very funny, right? So I was a parent, and I've dropped kids off at, preschool and childcare and pick up at the end of the day at a center that I also go and visit and spend the whole day there. But parents who just drop off and, pick up, they just see a teeny bit, but a whole world and set of adventures and up, downs, the whole thing happened while they weren't there. So they might just see the dirt at the end of the day. But I think it's good for us to talk about, well, what happened? Show pictures. There was an incredible mud kitchen. There was a banquet. They had feasts. They talked all about it. They drew pictures of what the menu would be. They had a name for their restaurant. They were collaborating. They're using language. They're drawing. They're having small motor skills as they're, making their concoction, and then they're having this teamwork and collaboration, and there's friendship, and so I think it's kind of trying to think about, okay, what are the words, how do we explain that? And one of the great things with play, as we know it's good, and for me, I say play for play's sake is good enough. I don't need to know the words. There's a million billion things going on with children's play, heart, mind, body, spirit, that I don't even know. It's too, it's beyond my level of understanding, but I believe in it. But at the same time, people need to hear those words that will resonate for them to be like, oh, okay, my child's in the right place. This kind of play is good.
Really believe it's about connecting with parents to know what they're concerned about and addressing those concerns, and then letting them know what the benefits are to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think you can get them on board once they understand the why. So before we end off, I did want to talk to you about risky play, but I don't think we'll have time to delve into that because I think that's a whole episode all on its own. But you kind of got into it a little bit with, when we're talking about mud play, some people might consider that risky play because they put mud in their mouth, they might eat it. Just address a little bit about risky play if you can.
Yeah, I say, there's different categories that people have about what different parts of risky play are, but I say that risky play can be thought of as play, just play, but it's the play that makes us adults nervous.
That's a good definition.
And yeah. And for we who love play, things still make us nervous. If a child's climbing in a tree, or they're balancing on a log, or they're getting close to nibbling on that mud pie, it can make us nervous. But we who love play and support play and believe in play want to say yes to play as much as we can. So there's lots of, I have a book, Adventures in Risky Play, and it's a lot of thinking about, okay, what do we say yes to? What do we say no to? And why? And how we can move the needle to yes more.
Yeah.
But it's complex because it's our own feelings of, how we grew up taking risks, or what a co-teacher might feel like. We might like to climb in trees, but they don't feel like we should do that, or what a director or parents or licensing. There's lots of different layers to it. If early childhood is about learning and growing, and that their job is to take it to the next level, take it to the next level, take it
And
to the
I
next
really
level.
believe it's about
And
also seeing them as competent. And that if we understand that children are
yes,
competent, we can allow them to take that next step. We can say yes to the next step, just as you said. I love that comment that you made about the three things, and the third thing was what we say yes to. I just love that idea that a lot of times we limit play by what we say yes or no to.
yeah. Yeah, so in some ways that could be the easiest thing that we do to our outdoor spaces. We don't have to make any changes, but except to ourselves. And maybe we say yes to some things that we never said yes to before. Before we put in planter boxes, or before we build a mud kitchen or any of that kind of stuff, or have loose parts, maybe we say yes to something that we thought we had to say no to, or we let children go climb up the slide. Can we do that?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. So it could be the easiest thing is making the changes in ourselves, but at the same time, maybe that's the hardest
true.
thing.
Yeah, changing perspectives, right, on how we view things.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me how people can get in touch with you, what channels they can find you on, and books, whatever it is. How can they find out about you and do a deep dive into anything that you're passionate about?
Yeah, awesome. They can go to my website, rustykeeler.com. And I work with people on designs. I can do master plans, but I also do just kind of a remote consulting. What would Rusty say about my yard? And help people think about making changes and things. I'm doing a lot of online classes now that people like, both nature play design, but also loose parts and risky play. I have a newsletter, like an email newsletter, that I'm always putting out fun resources and content on, and so people can join that journey. And then I have some free gifts and stuff. I don't know if you have links with
Yes,
this that I
absolutely.
can give you. Okay, yeah. Well, I have a fun like outdoor loose parts guide that for free that people can download, and then they can also get on my
Awesome.
newsletter
So we'll
with
put
that
all
too.
those links attached to this in the comments. Thank you so much, Rusty, for being here today. I just love even just your tone of voice is so calming. I feel so calm after this half hour
Oh,
of us chatting. But yeah,
all
I
right.
feel nature just emanating from you. And so thank you for all your insights. And I hope to have you back, and maybe we can talk again more about risky play a little bit more. I know that's a whole topic all on its own. But thank you again for being here today.
Sure thing, Susie. Thank you.
It was a wonderful session we had today with Rusty Keeler to learn all about nature play and outdoor learning, and how to set up your outdoor landscape to make the most of nature. I like the idea of taking small steps so that you don't feel too overwhelmed to create a space that perhaps doesn't have any nature in it to start with, and trying to transform it into a forest right away. It's not realistic. So taking small steps makes a lot of sense to me. One of the biggest takeaways I had from our talk was about what we say yes to. I really think that we as adults, as educators, and even as parents, we limit play because we're uncomfortable with certain situations. For example, Rusty mentioned allowing children to go up the slide instead of down the slide. I know particularly at my centers, we generally discourage children from going up slides because we think it's unsafe. But perhaps with a little bit of supervision, we can allow children to also go up the slide. It's all about what you say yes to. And I really believe that's the first step in creating a robust outdoor landscape, is first look at your own perspective. What are you allowing children to do on the playground? What kind of activities do you say yes to, and what do you say no to? And is there anything that you can possibly expand with just a little bit more supervision? Perhaps you can allow children to go up the slide. Perhaps you can allow a little bit more risky play. Once we have evaluated our own perspectives and what we will allow children to do, the next logical step is to look at the playground space and possibly add in new elements like mud kitchens, wood blocks, wood cookie cutters, and other wood features. And perhaps adding in dirt or water or other natural elements. And of course, loose parts galore, because that's what makes the space. If you had a classroom with just a carpet and walls and equipment, but had no materials, then that classroom would be devoid of learning. And the same is true for our outdoor spaces. If we have equipment and floors, but no materials, no extra things to add interest to the playground, then we have a playground devoid of a lot of learning. So let's not forget the loose parts, the things we add to the playground to make it interesting. I've really enjoyed recording this session on nature play, and I hope it's inspired you to improve your outdoor learning space and incorporate more nature into children's play. Thanks for tuning in to the ECE Classroom with Susie Beghin. For more information, you can visit our website at www.susiebeghin.com. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes. Thanks for listening.